How do you set your amp up?
No. How do you set your amp up? Very nice. Very nice. Hey everyone, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here. Hello.
Lovely.
Yeah, that had very little to do with what the video's about.
Yeah, it was fun.
But it's nice to make some noise.
Indeed.
Tell you what, that Skylar sounds nice.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Some quick housekeeping. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Also, any confusion over the t-shirts that we're wearing, in case you're watching this in March next year.
Get in early.
Get
Your holiday shirts will be available for Christmas 2022. But hopefully if you're watching on the Friday that this goes out, there's still time to bag one for the holiday season 2021.
Indeed.
Look at it. It's a genius bit of design.
It's wonderful.
It's like a reindeer and a pedal board.
No, it doesn't work.
Rainboard.
Yeah, rainboard.
Pedal deer. I prefer pedal deer.
Pedal deer.
Yes.
Pedal deer. Very good.
Are you still playing with your pedals, dear?
Yeah. So available from That Pedal Shop. No, thatpedalshowstore.com. That Pedal Shop. Thatpedalshowstore.com. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah. How to set your amp up, in brackets, for pedals.
Yeah.
We get asked this a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental thing, right? Because if the amp isn't set up properly, if you're not getting the best from your amplifier, this is sort of moot. You know.
I like that. Yeah, I liked it.
Been looking for a spot for weeks to get that in.
So what we've got is we're going to do 3 amps and we're going to whip through them. We've got a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe. The reason for having 3 amps is we want a clean amp. So we're going to do a clean, what you might refer to as a pedal platform. We're going to do an amp on the verge of breakup, if that's how you like to set your amps, Vox AC15. And then we'll swap those out in a minute. And we'll bring in the Victory VC35, the copper, and we'll run that pretty gainy. So you've got a clean amp, an on the edge amp, and a gainier amp, depending on where you like to start, and we'll go through some of the reasons why you might want to start in either of those places. We've got a board, really nice board actually, Dan.
Lovely, lovely board.
With a selection of stuff, so very deliberately chosen. We have a high headroom capable preampy boosty type thing in the Benson. Mm-hmm. It will do gain as well, but it does a high headroom boost quite nicely. We've got a mid-gained overdrive, the Nobels ODR-1, much loved by many people. And we've got a high gain overdrive distortion, the Filaments by Keeley, again, just to get all those bases covered.
Yes.
So Dan.
Yes, mate.
We're going to start with the Hot Rod Deluxe.
Okay.
I'm going to put all the knobs at 0.
Okay.
Amp cam.
Like it. Well, mobile light. That's really cool.
Ready?
Yeah. Ah.
You've either bought your Hot Rod Deluxe or you've arrived at a gig and there's a supplied backline and you've got a Hot Rod Deluxe.
Yes.
I'm going to hit record. It will autofocus, I think.
Okay.
It just might take a minute.
So everything's where?
Here's our Hot Rod Deluxe. Sorry about the shaky cam, but that's just the nature of things. So as you can see, we're all at 0.
All at 0.
Dan, what are you looking for?
If you just turn up the volume without touching any of the EQ at the moment,
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're not going to get anything or very little. So the EQ is really interesting. EQ is a whole bunch of filters, and as you turn up the bass, the middle, the treble, it lets those frequencies go through from the preamp into the power amp section. So, it's really important to sort of understand that the EQ is part of the gain stage. It's, the more that we open up those filters, the more signal we're letting go through to the power stage. So, with everything at 0, let's have a listen. So let's have a look at the treble frequencies and just nudge those up a bit. That's not bad. So at the moment, it's just a bit of treble and everything else is on 0.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'll do the bass in the middle.
Do the bass in the middle. So
yeah. I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll put everything on 5 and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Yep.
Ready?
Yep. Already feeling more alive.
Yeah.
So where are we?
We're currently everything on 5. I'm just going to turn everything up to 10 so you can hear what
Okay, yeah,
happens
very
there.
good. Oh,
How's
boy.
let me just see how our preamps are doing. What's interesting about that is that apart from any EQ characteristic, you've got more gain.
Yeah,
And that is because...
because we're driving more signal through from the preamp to the power amp. And it's too much. I don't want that.
So what do you want?
So what I want you to do, now let's go back to 0, all right? And I want you, one at a time, to turn up each EQ until you get to the point of most change.
Okay.
All right?
I can't really hear that, so you'll have to tell me.
Okay. So a really important thing when you're dialing in the EQ. So it's really hard for Mick to do this, for me to play, and for Mick to be doing this, you know, trying to give him signals where I want them. Really important thing is a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah.
So a really great way to start is looking for that point of most change where we're letting enough of that signal through that we're getting those frequencies through from the EQ section. But, you know, we're not all of them. We're not letting a whole, you know, the whole of that preamp signal through.
Cool. I need to just put the camera down because I can't do the knobs and hold the camera.
Okay.
So I'll look at you.
All right.
And you tell me, and we'll show you what they end up at.
Okay. All right. Dial in the bottom end until you feel that change. So I can dig in there, and it's, you know, the bass is there, but it's not destroying everything.
Let's do the mids then.
All right. I don't want that vocal formant type.
Yeah. What we know about the Hot Rod Deluxe is it does have a pretty killer mid-range,
Yeah.
which is really great in a band environment, but it can sound a bit nasally on its own.
Sure.
And don't forget that the EQ controls are all interactive.
Exactly that.
So one will affect the other.
Yeah.
So it might be that you go through a process of tweaking them each individually and then adjusting to taste. But what Dan said about that point of most change is a fairly open place to set the amp if that's what you want.
Yep.
If that's what you're looking for, and that's what we're looking for when we look at pedals. So where the Hot Rod Deluxe ended up was treble 5, bass 5, middle 3.5.
Okay.
So quite low EQ settings.
Can we get a shot of that?
I don't need to. I'll put it on the screen.
Okay.
It's really hard to hold the camera if I'm honest. And the volume is on 2.
Right.
Thereabouts. So obviously
Which
this
is
will all
plenty
change,
loud enough.
change with volume as well.
Yeah,
but
right.
yeah, it is plenty loud enough. You just play down. We'll see where we're peaking on the dB meter.
Okay.
Pretty flat, aggressive,
Grr.
straight in your face, clean pedal platform. Now, obviously, when you change guitars, that all changes. Hopefully, when you set your amp up doing that point of most change on each of the EQ pots, bearing in mind we're not talking about overdrive because it's just a clean channel. It only has master volume in that clean channel.
Mm-hmm.
This guitar should sound relatively balanced and like a 335.
Yeah. That's the hope.
Yeah, we'll see. So switching between a telly and a 335, I've got no worries with those EQ sounds.
No.
It's not over bassy.
Yeah.
We haven't dialed that bass in so that it sounds really big and fat for the telly. When you plug the 335 in, it's going to sound woofy and difficult and probably feed back a lot. So actually that's a pretty open place.
Yeah, it's nice. Really nice.
And I can tell you that if I plug the Strat in, it would be the same result. Although we might want to turn it up a bit for the Strat just because it's a bit quieter. So we're happy with that.
Very happy.
There's one additional thing I need to do is dial in some flipping reverb, Dan, because
Okay.
Actually, I'll tell you what we haven't done is the presence control at all.
Right, okay.
Play.
So is the presence on 0 at the
It's
moment?
currently on 0.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. This will change everything again.
Yeah. Is it actually doing anything?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Where do you like it?
Yeah, right in the middle, actually.
So there we go. That's how we've ended up. Volume on 2, treble on 5, bass on 5, middle on 3.5. The master's not in because it doesn't work on a clean channel.
Right.
Reverb and presence. That's our bass tone. Really sorry for the shaky cam.
So with the amp set like this, right, we have maximum headroom. So as I'm digging in, the amp isn't breaking up, right? It's just clean. What's there's a couple of ways you can go about it, but what a really good approach is to set this up as a sound that you're happy with no pedals, so that you've got a clean sound to go to that will work.
Yeah.
Right? Why a really massive headroom sound is cool is because this is the sound that you'll use when you want to hear the most detail from the pedals. All right. So, for example, you know, if you're into sort of atmospheric type sounds, you want to do those sort of big pad type things using big reverbs and delays, this sort of sound is a great way to get that, you know, to get that set up.
It's a good start.
Because you'll hear all the reflections in the reverbs.
Yeah, and also the amp isn't overdriving at all, so nothing gets mushy or nasty edges on it, which is what happens if you put delay and reverb before overdrive.
Yeah, yeah, can do. So if we put on a one of these shimmer.
Yeah, obviously if you were going into an overdriving amp, which we will get to, you wouldn't be hearing all that lovely lush.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that setting up the amp in the way that we've done enables that maximum amount of headroom. The problem that most of us run into, however, is overdrive.
Yeah.
So let's say you do. We'll do this as a sort of slight adjunct to the narrative here. If you've turned up and you normally use a slightly crunchy amp, and you're faced with something like a Hot Rod Deluxe, or more likely a black panel Fender type amp that doesn't have an overdrive channel, and it's too loud and too clean for you, one thing you can do is set one of your overdrive pedals as an always on, so it's kind of acting like a preamp. So let's say that straight in Hot Rod Deluxe sound is just too spiky clean for you.
Loads of dynamic, and when you dig in, it's like, oh man, it's like a punch in the face.
It is, and it's just very direct. So your only option really at this point, and unless you can turn it up
to get the amp driving,
which you may not be able to do because you're in a lower volume environment or you're at home or whatever, I'm going to use the Benson for this. We're going to set the Benson up just with a little bit of gain on it, and we can use that to take some volume out of the amp as well.
Yep.
I've been deliberately subtle on the overdrive so that it's not too gainy. It's just putting a bit of edge. It's also cutting a bit of bass. I've had to put the bass up quite a bit there.
Sure.
It changes the mid-range character a bit, but as a sort of a feel under the fingers for that core thing, I've got a bit more sponge there. I've got a bit more feel.
The other thing is it's changing the dynamics.
Yeah.
So that when you dig in, what you're hearing is breakup as opposed to
Yeah.
It's great.
So it doesn't just
punch you.
And that's that's everything we're talking about here is about gain staging. It's about where does it overdrive, at what level and at what frequency.
Yeah.
And just by setting your cleanest overdrive pedal up as just an always on might give you a bit more latitude and a bit more dynamic. So if you are faced with a clean amp and it's too clean and it's too spiky and you've got no way of getting it to really work, a boost or an overdrive set in that way can give you a bit more.
Absolutely.
A bit more dynamic.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. So then I guess we come on to heavier gain if you indeed you use it. I mean, most of us use light to a mid overdrive for some stuff, but then heavier gain too. And if you're a heavy rock player, you might turn up, see a Hot Rod Deluxe and go,
oh no,
oh no,
oh heavens.
But hopefully, as we're going to prove, it doesn't have to be the way. The thing you might want to watch some of our older videos on how to use overdrive pedals.
Yeah.
To put more detail on this. But what we've got with a clean headroom amplifier is
the dynamics. Yeah. Loads and loads of dynamics.
So when we step on any one of those overdrive pedals and their volumes are up, we're going to get a massive kick in volume because the amp is clean and it's got plenty of room to take all the extra volume for the pedal.
Yeah.
Which is what we'll find doesn't happen when we turn the AC15 on very soon.
Indeed.
So, Dan, if you've got your low gain, you've got your medium and you've got your high gain, how would you approach that?
Well,
into a high headroom amp.
The choice of pedal into a high headroom amp is so much more, I don't want to say important, but if I want to use that as a clean tone, because I'm going to hear all the detail, then if I want a heavy sounding pedal, it's not like having an amp gain and then sticking a tube screamer into it and boosting it.
Yeah.
All of the sound is going to be coming from the pedal.
Yeah, the pedal is really shaping the whole sound.
Absolutely. So it's, the choice here is critical. I really like the Filaments. We first heard this from Robert Keeley when we were in Germany. And I was like, yeah, man, it's killer. So the great thing about the Filaments is the tone shaping capabilities on it. So if you're using a high headroom amplifier and you want loads of gain in a pedal, EQ is super important.
Yeah.
We're looking for more than just a distortion pedal with a tone control. Certainly into an amp with such clean headroom.
Yeah.
So here we go. let's give this a whirl then. So, telly, clean.
So as you can see, we've got an absolutely colossal amount of EQ shaping on the, I just felt as we had it set, we needed that extra presency high end. So I turned on the bright switch, surprisingly enough. Well, got to be done, hasn't it? Here's some vintage humbuckers with the Keeley Filaments. Sorry, that's the one I was eventually looking for. If you had a more modern guitar, you've got Hot Rod Deluxe, you've got Filaments. I think you've got pretty convincing heavy rock sound there. Totally. Where have we got the gain? Yeah, 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
So there's plenty more there if you want it.
Yeah. So again, we don't have the gain cranked. You know, we're really careful about putting that gain where it's still dynamic.
Yeah.
But the EQ shaping and that in your heavy rock thing is absolutely key to making it work with a really high headroom amp.
What I was looking for, just twiddling it there, was lots of definition in the high end.
Yeah.
And
pick attack.
Not too much bass that it got mushy and not too much gain that it got mushy.
Yeah.
They're all, they're your choices that you tweak to taste.
Yeah.
But that works.
Totally.
Mid-range overdrive. We've chosen the ODR-1 deliberately because it just seems to work with everything. It's got a really nice EQ. It's not a massive game changer in terms of fundamental different shape in the EQ like something like a Tube Screamer would be. And I guess, again, this is to taste. What you'll have is an enormous amount of volume boost potential on tap because the amp's got so much headroom. So if we start, Dan, if you play, I'll just start with low drive, and we'll go from a sort of cleaner, boostier sound to a heavier overdrive from the Nobels.
great.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
I mean, easy, quick, almost the same method that we use with the amp, just setting that tone pot to the point of most change.
Yep.
And it works really well. Stacking wise, the reason we put the overdrive pedals in this order, highest gain first, medium gain second, lowest gain last, in the way we have the pedals set, is that then we've got a boost option in the Benson if we want to.
We do. The other interesting thing though, if the Benson the way it's set at the moment, we can actually stack those pedals in and using the Benson like an underdrive.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, if the amp is loud to the point where it's really uncomfortable and we kick the Benson on to bring everything under control, then we can still have that in place and stick the higher gain pedals into it. So if you just play for me for a minute. So what you get then...
Have mercy.
What you get then, if you can use the Benson as an always-on thing, and then take the Benson off for solos.
Yeah.
It's a great way to do it.
Underdrive, it's a really, it's a nice thing to do in an amp that's got plenty of headroom.
Yeah.
Because continually stacking on top of that headroom just means volume, unpleasant, kicked out of the band.
Yeah, sure.
Can do.
Yeah.
Okay, look, so what we've done there is we've gone clean amp, let's get it balanced, let's get it to its most open and sort of expressive, if you like.
Yeah.
So that whatever we give it, it's just going to reproduce without too much fuss. And we've proven, two very different guitars.
Yep.
Both sit fine in it. And actually that sounds like a Telly and this sounds like a 335.
Sure does.
Nice open place. The problem starts to happen when we then go, okay, we're not going to have a loud, clean platform. We're going to have an amp that's got a bit of crunch in it. And now things start to change.
Indeed.
So let's move to the AC15.
Indeed. So even set like that, it's already compressing.
Yeah.
I'm already hitting that ceiling. Whereas with the Hot Rod Deluxe, if I was digging in like that, just take your head off.
So now what we've got is a master volume and a gain control.
Right.
And I'll show you what happens. So again, with the massive apologies for the shaky cam, we've got to find a better solution for this.
Okay.
What you heard there is the amp can be really overdriven or really quite clean and headroomy. The question is, where do you want it, Dan?
Yeah.
So we're talking about an on-the-edge amp setup here.
Yeah. So let's get the volume to a point where it feels nice. So I'm feeling a little bit of love from the amp there. So let's get the preamp now to a point where just starting to feel a bit of crunch when I dig in. So there it is, right?
I think we'd call that on the edge, wouldn't we?
On the edge. So what I'm looking for is a sound that cleans up when I pick lighter, but as I dig in, it breaks up. And what that gives me, as opposed to the Hot Rod Deluxe where we had it, right? It's clean all the time. When I dig in, it just gets louder. This gives me a dynamic where I can play a clean section, but if I dig in, it's not going to get that much louder. It'll just get more overdriven, right? And limits. And a lot of people, you know, us included, love amps set like this because it gives you really expressive control over how you play. So yeah, just going from clean to overdriven based on the way that you pick.
What I think we're also getting there is very much the character of what we would consider to be a classic Vox sound.
There you go.
The chime, the word is chime that's used, and it's all about those treble frequencies.
Yeah.
So there's two ways we can attenuate or boost those. Actually, you can only attenuate them in the AC30. They're at 15, the AC15. There's a treble control, and I'll just turn that down and up, and then we'll get it into a place where Dan likes it.
Sure.
And then we'll use the master tone cut. And as far as EQ goes, in the way that we did with the Hot Rod Deluxe, we start with the preampy EQ stuff, bass, middle and treble. And usually you work along the panel until you get to the master section. And there may be another tone control, such as a presence control or the master tone cut. And we'd always say go in that order.
Sure.
So get your basic EQ set and then set the last thing as a sort of to taste.
Yeah, totally.
Let's get this treble where you like it.
Okay. Oh, wow. So what I'm after, I still want the chime, but when I dig in, I don't want it to take people's heads off.
And how is that for you?
That's not bad. It could even be just a tad warmer. Just a tad. Actually, no.
I'm going to do that with the tone cut.
Okay.
So
right.
the tone cut is a master control, which is the more you turn it clockwise, the more it rolls off high frequency.
Right, okay.
So I'll demonstrate that. We'll go from 0 all the way up to woolly.
So that feels really nice, right? Because I've got enough, there's enough top end and presence and sizzle in there that it still sounds like, you know, your Vox. All those frequencies are accounted for.
I do think it's been a hard day's night.
So those frequencies are so important for that sound,
Yeah.
right? But it's so easy to overdo them,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, getting that set at that point so I can dig in, still sounds like a Vox, but it's not gonna rip your head off.
So we ended up pretty much where we were. Bass at 2 o'clock,
Right,
treble at 11 o'clock, the tone cut at 2 o'clock,
right,
and the master at 2 o'clock, and the gain at 11 o'clock.
right, there we go.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, it always does seem to me that that's where they're set, 2 o'clock or 11 o'clock. Anyway, so let's see. So we know that that's working great for the telly. It sounds like a telly. It sounds like a Vox. What happens when we plug 335 in? Sorry, horrific tuning problem.
It sounds great.
I'd take some bass out.
Yeah, but it still sounds great. It still sounds like the 335. What is really interesting here, because we've got the amp set up to be crunchy, whereas with the Hot Rod Deluxe, we had forever headroom.
Endlessly forever headroom.
Endlessly forever headroom, right? But we don't have that with the 330, with the AC15.
Yeah.
So the amount of signal that we're pushing into the input of the amplifier via these signal generators is hugely important. So I've just grabbed this because this will have a bit more output, and you'll hear the difference. When I was digging in with the telly, it was just breaking up. It was clean when I was a bit softer with it. But with this, so even when I'm trying to play softer, it's still getting a lot of input.
What happens when you knock the master back a little bit?
It sounds great, but I would still set it up differently with this guitar.
Yeah, so what you, obviously, it's going to sound blinking too obvious to even say it, but if you run your amp a bit crunchy, the availability of clean possibility is greatly lessened.
Yeah, I don't think
So we can't, the way the amp is set currently, we can't really get a clean sound out of it, even when we've rolled that volume back.
with a guitar that's putting out this amount
With the humbucker.
Yeah. However, with the 335, with the the lower output
Yeah.
vintage style pickups and the telly, we were fine, right?
Well, I can tell you that this guitar
Right.
will do a super clean job,
Right.
probably. So
it's so much more important to, have the inputs matched if this is the way that you're going to set the amp up. Right. But it sounds fantastic, right?
It does.
Yeah.
There's a lot of latitude there.
A lot of latitude, and it gives you really lovely dynamics and expression when you're playing with an amp like this. So now we've got the amp set up. Let's have a think about the way we're going to approach.
Yeah, I would say at this point I wouldn't have it that gainy. I would definitely knock it back a bit from there.
Sure.
In order to get a bit more. So let's see what happens.
Yeah.
If you go back to the telly for a sec, we haven't changed anything on the pedals from where they were. Let's see what that Filaments is doing. Let's see if there's a hard rock sound available where we are. Kinda.
So just by adjusting EQ, we're not going to get there. The most important thing with this is gain.
Yeah.
It's too much.
It's too much.
It's just too much.
Because it doesn't have the headroom of the Hot Rod Deluxe, because it's already overdriving, what's happening is you're getting essentially a very disproportionate change in the way that those frequencies are being boosted and where they're overdriving.
Absolutely.
So what we've got is an amp caving in because we're trying to give it too much. I mean, you might think it's a really cool sound, and it is a pretty cool sound, but it's not that kind of tight, focused, hard rock sound that we had going in the Hot Rod Deluxe.
Absolutely.
Why? Because the amp doesn't have enough headroom to reproduce it.
Yeah. So the Filaments might not work in this situation, but if we turn the gain right down and then you go back to tweaking the EQ, see if you can...
He said turn the gain down. Just for a laugh, here's what's coming out the Hot Rod Deluxe at those settings. Just in case we needed a reminder when people tell you what pedals sound like.
Yeah, right.
They're very different. Okay, so we know that higher gain is always going to be more difficult. A higher gain pedal is always going to be more difficult into an amp that's overdriving already.
Exactly. So you just got to be very selective about pedal choice depending on the amps you're using, depending on the guitars you're using. You know, it's part of the chain. But the Filaments for me is there's just too much going on.
There's too much.
Just too much. So what we're after is boosty type things.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's set the Benson up with a bit of boost.
Yeah.
And just see how that goes.
Okay.
it's just pushing the amp.
Yeah, and it's lovely.
We're not really getting a massive lift in volume. We are getting a lift in volume, but not a massive lift in volume. We've covered that in many Overdrive shows in the past, so we won't go over why that is the case. Other than to say, if you're running your amp a little gainier like that, then a boosty type thing tends to be a bit better. What is interesting, now the amp is overdriving a bit, let's have a listen to our delays and reverbs.
Yes.
Because what we should hear is a little dirtier sound from the delays and reverbs.
So, here's what's really interesting, right? I absolutely love that.
Where it's just a bit dirty around the
Where
edges.
it's just... So, for me, what happens is, as opposed to it sounding like an effect, it integrates into the amplifier. So, if you're running your amp like this, you absolutely can run your delays and reverbs in the front.
Yep.
You've just got to be sensitive about the effect level.
Yeah.
But far out, man, they sound fantastic.
Yeah, so the what you will have noticed, hopefully, is that the delays and reverbs were a little more prominent in the Vox than they were in the Fender.
Because we're limiting our dynamic range in the AC15. So they're going to appear louder as opposed to the Hot Rod Deluxe, where we've got loads of dynamics, and they'll be quieter.
So if that is too much for you, if you're used to one response and all of a sudden you plug your reverbs and delays in, you're like, wow, that's just way too much. All you do is this. Turn the effect level down, and I don't know about you, but I quite often find I'm running my effect level at less than 9 o'clock on a lot of my wet pedals.
Yeah.
For that exact reason. You think, wow, I've paid all this money for the pedal, I'm only getting 8 o'clock out of it, you know? But as you heard, when you turn it down, it sits back in the mix fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you that massive wash. So that is a really good trick if you're running your amp gainy and you are using wet effects in the front. Levels down, stops it from like stamping over everything and taking everything away.
Totally. And modulation's interesting with an amp set like this as well. So, you know, basically, if we go back to the Hot Rod Deluxe for a second, and we hear the Astra into the Hot Rod Deluxe. It's really beautiful, but with that going into the AC15, As opposed to, if we go the Hot Rod Deluxe with the Astra and the ODR-1, so... So it's exactly the same as the delays and reverbs because we are essentially putting our modulation into overdrive. We get all those, you know, the edges and stuff. You feel the fuzzy around them, which is why I love putting certain modulations before my gain stages.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic way to do it.
Yeah. So the question comes then, once you get into your wet effects, at what point do you have to have an effects loop? Because as Dan just said, you know, into a clean amp, just run them straight in the front. No need to use the effects loop really, because they'll sound clean and lovely because the amp's got loads of headroom and, you know, they're not getting overdriven. There then comes this really sweet spot, which certainly Dan and I identify with, which is any kind of amp from a slightly overdriving deluxe reverb through a Vox AC type amp, through even a plexi into a small amount of crunch.
Yeah.
Running especially analog effects into the front of that is a very, very lovely harmonic place to be, even though the delays are overdriving a bit and the reverbs might be overdriving a bit.
But if we're sensitive about that and we set the level at the right spot, if they can be magic,
it can still work.
But where is that line?
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna cross the line. We've
line is a dot to you.
Yeah. We've had the Vox set relatively crunchy. We're now going to bring in a much higher gain amplifier and have a look at why you might want to run your delays and reverbs in the loop, and certainly the effect of our overdrive pedals on an amp that's set crunchier.
Three, two, one. And we're back in the room.
As you see, the Hot Rod Deluxe has gone away. We now have a Victory VC35, the copper. VC35.
I can't say it either.
The copper. So we'll just whip through the process of setting up our amp as we did with the AC15 and with the Hot Rod Deluxe.
Indeed.
Just to get it at a place that we think is nice and open, and then we'll make it gainy after that.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice.
Happy?
Yeah, lovely.
Did you change anything?
A little bit more bottom end if it's got it.
It's got loads.
It's so interesting that even just adding that tiny little bit of bottom end has changed everything.
Too much gain?
No, just if you pull the bottom end back out again. Yeah, so it's that thing again. As soon as it's there and prominent, anything more than that is too much.
Yep. It does. Interestingly, when we go gainier, it does have a bass cut switch. That's what this does.
Right.
Just going to knock that reverb back a little bit.
Yep.
So what I want to do now, Dan, is set it up so that as gainy as you can stand it.
Okay.
All right?
Yep. I would find that hard to work with.
Then that's where we'll start. Because there are plenty of you out there who like to run your amps this gainy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Good.
Go for it. Okay, how are you finding that EQ wise?
It's fine. It's so much dirtier than I'm used to playing with.
Yeah.
So that's a learning curve, but it's fine. It's fine. Again, limiting that bottom end is key.
Yeah. So if the bass cut is on,
right, with and lower bass. Wow.
And the bass is quite a way down.
And that's funny and that's with a Telecaster that has no bottom end.
Yeah. Well, it's a 212 cab, remember, as well.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
We've got a little bit more love happening from the cab itself.
Sure.
So let's just see where we are with the 335, given that that's the humbucker guitar we've been using. So set like that, this guitar is now unusable with that amp because there's just too much gain.
Yeah.
And I can't get any cleanup.
Right.
Nothing's happening. There's no dynamic because the humbuckers are just killing it.
Right. Interesting. I didn't know it was that gainy. Man.
Gain's only on 2 o'clock.
Man, wow.
It's this gainy. Carry on.
It's too much for me, baby.
Yeah, because there's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go.
So I don't know. Let's leave it there. I'm going to turn the master up a bit just to get a bit more, headroom potential.
Sure.
So now, for those of you who like to run your amps gainy, now we stumble into a couple of problems. Number one, no matter what we step on here, it's going to be an ungodly mess.
At that level, yeah.
Let's do it.
Very difficult. Very difficult.
Tell you what's quite nice about that is even with the bass a long way up on the Benson, it's cutting quite a lot of the bottom end.
Yeah.
So it's helping the amp stay a bit more.
Totally. So all we're doing is shaping.
Yeah. So let's have a listen to the ODR-1. We started off with the gain in the filaments on 0.
Yeah. It's just...
It's cool sound, sludgy, nasty.
What is James Brown's a sludge metal?
Yeah, sludge metal. That was terrible, sorry. But in terms of definition and dynamic and all those things that certainly me and Dan want when we play the guitar, it's completely gone. Forget a high gain overdrive pedal into a high gain amp.
Yeah.
If you want to retain picking dynamics and all those things that we enjoy.
Totally.
The Benson was actually pretty decent with the gain at 0, shaped it quite nicely, and actually there were some good tones in the Nobles as well.
Yep.
So in terms of shaping, you back to the top of the show, how to set your amp up for using with pedals. If you're arriving at a really gainy amp, there's not much you can do with pedals other than shape.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and obviously we could turn the gain down in the Victory, but it's up deliberately to illustrate the point. The next point is about what happens when you shove nice delays and reverbs into the front end.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll do it both ways.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to hear it in the front.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the effects loop. Okay? Right. Let's do it like this.
Okay, bit of jiggery pokery, just plugging everything in. Dan has arranged it so that the Skylar and the Volante can be both or either in front of the amp or in the effects loop. We've done the signal routing in G3 for that. If you don't have such a thing, obviously it's just plugging the cables in the respective order.
Exactly. We'll show you on the screen though where they are in the signal path so you can see.
Shall we start with the Volante?
Start with the Volante.
So we've got the... oh, I've turned the gain down, Dan. That's no good. It was at 2 o'clock, I believe. And therefore it should stay at 2 o'clock.
Indeed.
Well, let's hear it then, in the loop and in the front.
Okay, so this is the Volante in the front. The issue is that even when it's low, it's distorted.
Yeah.
The delay is distorting.
It's distorted and the tonal goes away. Whereas in the loop, as you heard, it's much cleaner sounding, it's much nicer. Lo and behold, if you run your amps Gainy, that's why so many people like to use their effects loop, because it places the wet effects after the overdrive, which is happening in the preamp section of the amp. Let's just try that with reverb a sec, Dan.
Okay.
With the Skylar there.
So in the front of the amp. In the loop. You can't play. There's nothing. There's no definition. There's just a wall of noise.
The important caveat is for the styles of music that Dan and I tend to play, which is fairly straight down the road, rock and roll, pop, blues, and rock. Of course,
and really out there prog.
Well, when you get into your really out there prog, and certainly dare we say shoegaze,
yeah,
and the genre that live around it. That's exactly what you do.
It becomes really appropriate.
You put your reverbs and delays before your overdrive. So It's about, the appropriateness of the music you're playing. Or at least the appropriate sound for the music you're playing. We've kind of stumbled through it today because there's a lot to talk about.
There is. And it is an overview. Each one of these setups could be a whole hour show on its own.
Yeah.
But, setting up that core tone from the amplifier, whether or not you're using fully forever headroom, bit of crunch, or you're getting basically all the gain from the amp.
That's it, isn't it? So let's summarize and say, if you're playing an unfamiliar amp, start with that relationship of EQ and gain. Just get the headroom that you like. So it's either overdriving a little bit or not at all or a lot. Get the EQ to that point of most change on the dials there. So the amp is responding in the way you like it to the guitar.
Yep.
And for us, you saw us do it at the Hot Rod at the top of the show. It's where the amp is open and the most able to make any of these guitars sound like themselves without being too much. The minute you add gain, the minute you add overdrive in the amp, everything changes.
Everything changes. You're changing the dynamics, the limiting,
And it really then does become a much more complex infrastructure of your pedals, your guitar, your playing technique and everything else, which of course can lead to a very magic place.
Indeed, and it's a place that we love, right? That
Yeah,
having it set up with a little bit of crunch in there, it's, it becomes dynamic and expressive, and experimenting with that sort of stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know where that leaves you. Hopefully it gives you a few tools.
Or it just might lead you to ask a better question for yourself and for your own rig.
And not be, completely spun out when you hit an amp that you haven't played before. You'll know at least somewhere where to begin.
Indeed.
To get it to where you like it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. A massive thank you to our preferred retailers in the UK and Europe is...
Anderson's Music of Guildford. I can't get my words out today, Dan. Bit tired. It was all that red wine last night.
It was all the red wine last night. The lovely aerated red wine, I might add.
The Anderson's Music of Guildford in Surrey.
And our friends in Australia.
Would be Pedal Empire, Brisbane, Queensland.
Also, please click in the description and check out the links below.
Yeah, check the links. If you click on them and use them, Dan and I earn a bit of money out of that, and it helps us fund this show.
Yes. A massive thank you to our patrons on Patreon as well.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your support.
That Pedal Show store.
That pedalshowstore.com.
Go there for your seasonal and non-seasonal t-shirts.
Yes.
And other accoutrements.
Yeah.
I've stolen your word.
I like that. Very good. Cheers, everyone. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you on Monday for viewers' comments and questions.
We will.
Indeed. Have a great day. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.